Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today is Monday, which means it's time for an episode of Loadout, the series where you guys, the viewers, get to pick a kit and customization for me to use. The way you do this is you leave a comment in the comments section of this video letting me know what kind of gun and accessories you'd like me to run with, and I will pick one of the top rated comments for next week's episode of Loadout. Today's top comment comes from Static Players, who suggests the AUG A3, Kobra or Red Dot, underslung, laser sight, or heavy barrel, depending on the map, M1911 tactical, defib, and M26 flechette. Now, I will admit I kind of read this post wrong when I first glanced over it, and for some reason when he said defib, I was thinking medpack, because if you're playing assault, you always have defib. There's no point in mentioning defib, and for some reason I just ran with medpack. Then I reread it and I was like, I should run with flechette for this, but I did so amazingly well using just the medpack and forgetting about the M26 entirely that I thought I would post this video and just review this loadout. However, I will address that the AUG A3 has great hipfire, so running with a shotgun for close quarters engagements is totally not necessary. It could be helpful. I could definitely see it being helpful, especially since the AUG A3 doesn't have the fastest reload in the world, but it just has such great hipfire that close quarter engagements are totally workable with the AUG A3. Now, I'll say I have a lot of nostalgia for the AUG A3, regardless of how it performs in Battlefield 3. The gun just looks awesome. It's one of the first and most classic bullpup weapon designs out there, and it's just been in so many movies and video games. It's a really cool looking gun. Now, I really like how DICE gives the bullpup design weapons better hipfire. Bullpup design being a gun that loads the magazine behind the trigger mechanism. This allows you to fire the shots from more towards the rear of the gun, giving you easier to manage recoil, and also the barrel of the gun is long within the actual body, so you don't have to have the barrel come out further in front of the gun, and in real life this allows you to have a more compact gun design, allowing for more maneuverability in close quarter situations. Now, in the video game, obviously having a more compact weapon doesn't exactly give you better maneuverability in close quarters. You know, all weapons seem to have the same kind of maneuverability. The only thing that it might help with is if you're next to a corner, your barrel might not stick out around the corner as far with the AUG A3, so potentially not giving yourself away if somebody's watching that corner and they see a gun barrel stick out. Now, as in real life, the AUG A3 takes a little bit longer to reload than a traditional design assault rifle, just because having the magazine behind the trigger mechanism just makes it a little bit more awkward. So the reload of this weapon is 2.5 seconds if you have a bullet in the chamber, and 3 seconds if you have 0 bullets left over. This is kind of on the longer side, but it's still very much manageable. Now, this gun is extremely effective at medium range engagements. It is effective at longer range, but it doesn't quite have the same accuracy as some of its competing weapons like the M416, the M16A3, the L85A2. All those guns shoot a bit more accurately at long range because they have easier to manage side-to-side recoil. Now, you're welcome to put a foregrip on the AUG A3 to try and manage some of the side-to-side recoil. It's a little bit on the higher side, so you can play around with it, but overall I didn't find a huge difference between using a foregrip and not using a foregrip, just because the foregrip does add a little bit of inaccuracy to your aim shots. So it didn't really give me an overall accuracy increase when applying a foregrip. However, a foregrip will make your hipfire a lot better, so you could potentially run with a foregrip and still have a very effective assault rifle. Now, one stat that I really like about the AUG A3 is that it has a bullet velocity of 670 meters per second. This is faster than any other assault rifle on the field. The closest assault rifles in bullet velocity would be the M16A3 or the KH-2002, which come in at 650, which is almost as fast, but the AUG A3 holds the crown of fastest bullet speed with 670, and what this means is that you really don't have to lead your shots, especially if you're shooting people at medium range and somebody's running across the screen perpendicular to you. You don't have to lead those shots. You just shoot directly at them and the bullets will impact. This makes the weapon extremely easy to pick up and become good with right off the bat. There isn't a huge amount of recoil compensation to learn with, and you don't have to lead the gun. Now, in terms of this actual loadout and using a heavy barrel on this thing, I would say absolutely use a heavy barrel. The heavy barrel does increase your vertical recoil a little bit, and it increases your aimed accuracy and decreases the accuracy of your hipfire. Now, this gun already has great hipfire accuracy, so throwing a heavy barrel on there isn't really going to detract too much from that. You can still hipfire very effectively with this weapon, even with a heavy barrel on it. It's going to increase your damage at range, which is a must in my opinion for any assault rifle. And having that tighter initial cone of fire, which the heavy barrel provides, is just invaluable at medium and long ranges. Especially at medium ranges, it makes pulling off headshots or a body shot and then a headshot back to back quite easy to do, so you can really drop your opponents very fast if you've got your aim down. As for using the Kobra on this thing, I think the Kobra works fine. You're also welcome to use a hollow sight on this. Although this gun doesn't have the best long range accuracy, medium range can still be kind of fun using the hollow sight. It gives you a tiny bit more magnification than the red dot or Kobra, and that can improve your accuracy at medium range engagements. You just have to kind of gauge what you're more comfortable with. I'm very comfortable with the Kobra and red dot sights, so I prefer using those for just about any range. Now, as for long range engagements, the one area where the AUG A3 isn't particularly king, this is because of the side-to-side recoil, which is basically impossible to compensate for, whereas vertical recoil is much easier to compensate for. So once you get a mastery of vertical recoil with a gun that doesn't have any side-to-side recoil, you can become very accurate at long ranges. The side-to-side recoil on this thing, you can't compensate for it, making your long-range targets a little bit harder to drop in a fast time frame. Now, you might watch me here dropping a lot of targets at long range, but I am having to expend quite a few bullets to do so, a bit more than I might need to with a M16A3 or an AK-74. Now, one thing that can actually help out the AUG A3's accuracy, or at least controllability at medium and longer ranges, is its slower rate of fire. It fires at 700 rounds per minute, which is 50 rounds faster than, say, an AK-74 and 50 rounds slower than the M416. So it does give it a very easy to control recoil. The only downside of this is if you run into an opponent with one of those faster firing assault rifles that has managed to master their recoil very well, then you will basically lose that firefight. So that's one of the trade-offs of having a slower firing weapon. It's going to drop your opponent slower, but it's going to have easier to manage recoil. So when I compare the AUG A3 to some of the other faster firing assault rifles out there, the AUG is easier to master. It's definitely more novice friendly. It's a fun gun to use. I'm not saying it's a novice gun because I quite enjoy using this weapon, but it just doesn't have a lot of room to grow beyond the initial recoil mastery, because you can basically become a master of the recoil with this weapon within a day, and then beyond that you really can't get any more performance out of this weapon. Whereas if you're using a fast firing weapon like an AEK or something like that, it takes a little while to master that recoil. It can definitely be tricky, but once you master that recoil, you can basically have a much more dominant presence on the battlefield. You have a fast firing weapon, and if you can control where those bullets are going, you're going to be able to outclass an AUG A3 any day on the battlefield. So ultimately, I actually really like the AUG A3 a lot. It's a very fun gun to use. It's just not quite as fun to use when you're up against a pro using the M16A3 or AEK, because you can be spot on your game, your accuracy can be perfect, your reaction time can be great, you're just going to lose those gunfights. But for variety's sake and nostalgia's sake, I still really like the AUG A3. I can do very well with it. As you'll see at the end of this round, I get just a monster score using the AUG A3. I really don't think you need any sort of M26 backup for this weapon. The shotgun backups are nice if you have a gun that's perhaps extremely good at long ranges and just terrible at close quarters, but the AUG A3 is pretty decent at close quarters because of its decent hipfire accuracy. So this is not a weapon that I would recommend using the M26 with. So that pretty much wraps it up for this episode of Loadout. Again, static player, I apologize for not running with the M26. I just forgot about it, and then it was a little bit too late to get this video out if I was going to play a few more rounds. But again, I encourage you all to leave your comments in the comment section of this video, letting me know what kind of gun you'd like me to run with for next episode of Loadout. Please rate the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.
Thank you.